So last night into this morning, we saw something pretty wild right here in the US, in El Paso. The FAA suddenly slammed a temporary flight restriction over El Paso International Airport and nearby Santa Teresa, New Mexico, shutting down all flights, commercial cargo, general aviation, even medevac for hours. The original order was supposed to last 10 full days, which is insane for a busy hub like that. But it turns out it was triggered by Mexican cartel drones crossing into U.S. airspace near the border. The military out of Fort Bliss stepped in fast, neutralized the threats, and the FAA lifted the restriction by afternoon, confirming no ongoing danger. This is exactly what was said. The FAA and Department of War acted swiftly to address a cartel drone incursion. Secretary Duffy announced in a statement on X, referring to the Department of War, "The threat has been neutralized, and there is no danger to commercial travel in the region," which is why they opened up the airspace early. So likely the Department of War was assessing, is this a broader scale attack, or was this just some sort of a localized incursion that came and popped into airspace that is very sensitive with commercial traffic coming in? Because if it's a larger broad scale incursion that's going to continue, that's likely why it would have stayed a temporary flight restriction for 10 days. So let's pop to X real quick. I want to show you the actual drones that the cartels could be using and what they could be doing. So here we are. This is a video of the new generation Jalisco cartel. They're preparing for a battle, likely it looks like against a militia going up against either another cartel or going up against a government. And you can see that their operator is right there running the drone, likely at this point getting ISR intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And it's very interesting. You can kind of see a flash of the patch that he just had on his shoulder. This is wild. So this is the patch that just flashed on his shoulder. So literally the cartels have drone operation units, and they have said to been sent to Ukraine and trained in some of the dronemies there. But this one right here is very interesting. It shows this dude loading something onto the drone. So that could be drugs that are being smuggled. It could be explosives. So at this point, the drone threat has hit level 11. And this, I think, is just a shot across the bow. Seeing this dude right here load this on, you know what else could be loaded onto these drones? This is why concerts, sporting events, places with large gatherings of people need anti-drone technology. And then this is a portable drone signal jammer. So not only do the cartels have drones, but the CJNG here has this massive jammer that they're using to jam rival cartel factions' drones. So it just shows you the capability. And this one is of a cartel dropping a weapon. So this is the R5 cartel seemingly used a DJI Mavic Matrix drone carrying an airdrop improvised high explosive bomb. So as you can see, the cartels have this capability, and this is something that's in their playbook right now. So what are they loading on these drones? What are these drones carrying? Very crucial that the Department of War continues to do what they do and crush these drones. We're going to get into specifically how they're likely doing that later in the video. But either way, this grounded thousands of passengers highlights how border drone activity can hit civilian aviation hard. So stick around to the end because I'll walk you through one realistic what-if swarm scenario and the full strategic breakdown of what this means going forward. So by Wednesday afternoon, the FAA said the threat was resolved, lifted the restriction, and flights started resuming, though some cancellations and delays obviously lingered. So, cartel drones, let's talk about what those are. They're usually modified quadcopters, kind of what we looked at on X. Think DJI Mavic 3s, DJI Matrix 300s, or ATL Evo 2 series that have been tweaked with extended range antennas, aftermarket batteries, or custom payloads. These platforms are the go-to because they're cheap. I mean, a few thousand are widely available. They're easy to buy legally in Mexico or the US, and they have excellent cameras, 45-minute flight time, and ranges of up to 10 nautical miles. Plenty for them to cross the border from Juarez into neighborhoods or into airspace that's used by civilian traffic. The cartels favor these because of surveillance. They can map border patrol shifts, vehicle positions. They can guide ground smuggling teams and occasionally drop small loads of fentanyl or meth or whatever across the border. They're small, they fly low, and they typically fly around 30 to 60 miles per hour. They can blend into normal civilian drone traffic and be disguised as a hobbyist, and they're disposable. If one gets shot down or jammed, they don't lose a couple million. They lose like a couple hundred or $1,000. That low-cost, high-volume approach is exactly what makes them so hard to stop consistently, and why one night of activity can suddenly snarl things at an entire airport. So, let's talk about the workhorse platforms that are used for spotting and supporting counter-drone operations. These are things like the MQ-9 Reaper, which likely teamed up with the U.S. Army out of Fort Bliss potentially. None of this has been confirmed yet, but that is powered by a TP-1331 turbo-Roppy engine. It can cruise at 170 mph. It can stay airborne for 27 hours doing combat surveillance over several hundred miles of Earth, depending on exactly what it's carrying. That long of a loiter time makes it ideal for persistent ISR, intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance for you acronym lovers over the border region, feeding real-time video back to operators at Fort Bliss or higher headquarters so they can track suspicious drone activity before it reaches U.S. airspace. The Army also flies MQ-1C Gray Eagle variants out of places like Fort Bliss. Similar turbo-ROP setup, good endurance, and it can carry sensors or even light weapons if needed for quick responses. These unmanned systems integrate tightly with ground-based counter-drone teams, giving commanders eyes in the sky without putting man crews up there and being able to keep them up there for 24 hours at a time. And the way these things are controlled is extremely precise, which is why I like the fact that these could be up there operating in areas where there's civilian traffic as well. And there's integrated software that helps them deconflict from any type of civilian traffic. So to me, these drones, it's like Iron Man using the suit to track and neutralize multiple threats all at once in some of the best battle scenes ever. So the counter-drone toolbox from the Department of War is more than just drones. And it's likely increasing every single day. I mean, every hour or so, they're probably updating software, getting better at targeting these drones. So think of a mix of layered systems. So RF jamming, radio frequency jamming is the go-to for disrupting the drone's control link and GPS. So it loses guidance, wanders off course, or maybe just does an auto land. And then you can step that up from there. So companies like Matrice, companies like Anduril, they've made directed energy weapons like high-power microwaves or lasers that get a lot of testing at places like Fort Bliss. So at this point, it wasn't just testing in my opinion. They took these things out and they fried the drone's electronics from a distance without a kinetic splash. You just wait until the drone is over an unpopulated area, fry it with that microwave weapon, and then boom. This could also spoof the drones into thinking it's somewhere else and redirect it to fly away safely or to do an auto land. For anything that gets closer, there are small kinetic interceptors like the Coyote that can ram or net an intruder. All of this ties together through network sensors and data links for fast queuing. So ground radars or the MQ-9 could spot the launch and then pass the track. And the CUAS system, the counter-UAS system, I'm your daily dealer of acronyms. It engages autonomously or with operator approval, and it's designed to handle low-cost swarms without turning the border into a no-fly war zone for everyone else, where you couldn't have traffic, for 10 days. This technology is so good, in my opinion, and the Department of War is getting so good at this because a lot of the bases overseas are all protected with this QAS technology as well, that it's kind of like they're becoming a surgeon with a scalpel. They're able to go up, take down these cartel drones, whether they're smuggling or attack drones, and then you don't have to disrupt the entire flow of air traffic for 10 days. That's how good they're getting at this counter-UAS systems. So let's talk about a section I like to call 4D chess. We'll zoom out a little bit and talk about El Paso, what we can learn from there, and how cartels are getting more sophisticated with cheap drone tech. Incidents like this show how easily they can disrupt civilian infrastructure and force military responses. And they're being pinched right now. They're being pinched in Mexico, in the Caribbean. All the different smuggling units are basically in a position where they're being backed into a corner. And these are mini militia, mini armies. So they're not going to go down quietly. They're going to try to put pressure on the U.S. They're going to try to disrupt U.S.-Mexico cooperation, and they're going to ultimately try to find weaknesses in the defenses. they're going to try to find chinks in the armor where they can get through and maybe in their mind, distract the US with something domestic so you can't go and strike down their golden palaces and kick them off of their golden crappers because obviously they've been living that lavish life without any type of interdiction. But now that interdiction has started, and I think they're being pinched harder than they ever have before, which is why they're maybe doing things like this, probing airspaces, trying to distract the military, trying to distract Border Patrol. But what this will call for will be tighter integration of military and civilian airspace control, and potentially having these organizations talk more than they ever have before, with airspace being coordinated to be shut down briefly, and then drones being targeted by the Department of War and then reopening quickly. That's going to be a symphony that I think will take place on an even tighter level now that we've seen this drone incursion. And we see that the cartels are basically testing US airspace defenses. So let's talk about a hypothetical scenario on how this could have played out, but it was definitely struck down by the Department of War. So again, hats off to all those counter-drone operators whose job it is to go strike these things down and basically look these things in the eye, these robots that are coming in trying to cause havoc, and just takes them out of the sky in the blink of an eye with some of this technology. Very impressive. Let's say the Department of War picks up chatter about a cartel run, and they don't know what it is at this point. Could be a smuggling run, could be explosives, basically just trying to cause chaos in the United States. Suddenly, ground sensors at Fort Bliss light up. They're being passed information from an MQ-9 Reaper run by Border Patrol that's up above that gets this information. They see 30-plus small drones lift off from a warehouse area in Esud Wares, and they're heading north. They're low and slow around 50 men/ph to map patrol routes to see what Border Patrol is going to do, to map the reaction, and to actually drop off something that they're smuggling. The MQ-9 Reaper already is orbiting up there. It's the eyes in the sky. It's at 15,000 FT, and it picks them up on its sensors from several miles away and cues the counter-drone team in. Fort Bliss operators light off RF jammers, microwave jammers, and they break the control link, sending half of the swarm into uncontrolled spins or return to home mode. As a few keep coming, the directed energy system high-powered microwave array lights them up and fries the electronics. So, the drones drop harmlessly into the desert, short of any type of airport approach where civilian traffic could be. The MQ-9 stays on station feeding video the whole time, while a quick reaction helicopter spins up just in case. But ideally, you take these things down without anything kinetic, since they could be overpopulated areas. The whole thing would be wrapped in 15 minutes or so. No damage to the airport, no civilian flights affected, but it forces everyone to tighten procedures and shows how fast these low-cost threats can escalate if the response isn't layered and ready to go. And for what we saw Ukraine do to Russia, destroying a lot of their bomber force, a dozen-plus bombers destroyed by quadcopter drones. Everybody was watching that, right? The cartels were watching that. They know that's an option. So they're going to look for any chinks in the armor of U.S. defenses. Again, large airport areas, airspace that's highly critical, even concerts, places like that. It's on the U.S. at this point. It's on cities and local governments to make sure all these different places are protected and have anti-drone technology in place. So, what do you guys think? To bring it all together, this all started with that sudden FAA TFR shutdown at El Paso International Airport, those drones crossing into the U.S. airspace, the quick military neutralization out of Fort Bliss, and the fact that the Department of War is getting better and better at striking down these drones every single day. Let me know what you think. Do you think we'll see more cartels testing the border? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm posting on X and Instagram pretty much every day, so follow me there. And if you want to see me do a live every week, go to the Max Ready Room. It's in the description. Click that and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next video that pops up right here.